Okay, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Feel like I'm your guest speaker. It's been a while. Sorry, just had a busy couple of weeks, and we'll have a couple more busy weeks ahead of me. But in the meantime, let's take advantage of the time we have together to learn some beautiful Torah. We are on the bottom of Daf Tzadi Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom, right as the Gemara opens. And here we're going to be discussing the principle, the well-known principle in Shas of Tadir. Whenever we have a case of Tadir, we're talking about something that may be done first because of precedence of frequency of use. A daily example of this is by talis and tefillin. We always put on our talis first because a talis is put on 7 days a week. And tefillin are not put on 7 days a week, they're only put on 6 days a week. A talis is put on every day, including holidays, and tefillin are not put on those holidays. So the din of tadir v'she'eno tadir kodem, is a din that requires me to do a commandment that is preferential due to its frequency. However, as the Gemara opens, we're going to contrast the principle of tadir with the principle of kedusha. And this is how the Gemara opens on the bottom of Tzadi Amud Beis. The Gemara says, Iboya Lehu. From the Beis Medrash, they asked a question. If you have a case of tadir, that means between the two things, one of them is done more frequently. And in general, we say tadir v'she'eno tadir kodem. However, in contrast, we have umekudash. We have, it's nice to meet you. I'm a guest.
Really well. I just want to
I'm a guest. He hasn't even sat down yet.
There's a song for the. Did you notice
that? It's unbelievable. I appreciate your menschlichkeit. You're just So the Gemara says, if you have a case of tadir and a case of mekudash, ezo mehem kodem. So you have two things. One of them really is tadir. It happens more frequently, but the other one has a greater level of sanctity. Which one comes first? Do we say tadir kodem mishum de tadir? Does the more frequent one go first because we have a principle of tadir v'she'eno tadir kodem? O dilma mekudash kadim de kadish. It's an interesting question. I actually think about talis and tefillin this way. Which one has more kedusha? The tefillin, parchments, right? We wear tzitzis into the bathroom. I know a lot of this in a lot of the secular shuls that I frequent. It says, "Please remove your talit before entering." Ladina, there's nothing wrong with wearing that. We take it off, but it's
sure.
Huh? Pasha.
We all do.
Everybody does, but it's not. We don't take off our talis katan.
Israel has a beautiful rack.
They have a rack, yeah.
And to the left of it is about 20 hammocks.
Yeah. Things have changed. Yitzi Simcha. No, that's not from the original. Not from the original build. Yeah, it's a doily rack. So that's the Gemara's question. Do we have preferential treatment for Tadirus, or do we have preferential treatment for Kedusha? And the Gemara is going to navigate through 6 different answers, which will bring us to the 2 dots halfway down. Toshma, bottom line of Tzadi Amud Beis. Well, we have Tamid and Kodem Lemusafin. The Korban Tamid is brought in the morning. The Korban Musaf is not brought first, it's brought second. Now, we're allowed to bring the Korban Musaf in the morning. That's not a problem. But there is a kadimus of having the Korban Tamid. So the Gemara wants to know which one comes first. When it comes to Tamidin, we say it's Korban Lemusafin. Turning to the top of Tzadi Aleph Amud Aleph, V'afal gav de Musafin Kedishi. Oh, so here we see that Tadirus is more important. Why? Because the Korban Tamid, which according to the Gemara has a lesser Kedusha, goes first, even though the Korban Musaf has a greater Kedusha. Haraya must be that Tadirus is more powerful than Mekudash. Says the Gemara, absolutely not. On Shabbos morning, you think that the Musaf has more Kedusha than the Tamid? The Gemara, it almost feels like a hashkafa. Look at this answer. Atu Shabbos l'musafin ahanoi. You think Shabbos only goes to help the Korban Musaf? L'tmidin lo ahanoi. Yeah, and you think that by Shabbos it doesn't elevate the Kedusha of the Tamid? This rhetorical response of the Gemara seems to equate the Korban Tamid of Shabbos with the Korban Musaf of Shabbos as it relates to Mekudash. And therefore, all that's left is Tadirus. And because the Korban Tamid is every day, and the Korban Musaf is on rare days, Tadir V'Sheno Tadir Tadir Kodem, but it's not really a question of Tadir and Mekudash, because the Kedusha of the Tamid is elevated to the same level of the Kedusha of the Musaf, simply because it's Shabbos. I find that fascinating. I still would have thought that the Kedusha of the Musaf was greater, but I'm wrong. That's what the Gemara says. That is asked and answered. Question number 1. Here's answer number 2. Let's review the question. If we have Tadir against Mekudash, which goes first? So the Gemara says, Tashma. We have, from a couple blot ago on Daf Peites, Musve Shabbos Kodman LeMusve Rosh Chodesh. Yes.
Benefits from Shabbos?
Shabbos, atu Shabbos lemusaf and hanoi. Does Shabbos only help? And in this case, that means to elevate. Does it only elevate the kedusha of the korban musaf? No, it also elevates the kedusha of the tamid. That's how we are reading it here. It happens to be that there's a little girsa change to ahani, which is a word we're a little more familiar with. Looks like that extra aleph got stuck in there. But that is how the Gemara frames it. If you look at Rashi, he says this clearly at the top of the page. V'afal gavdu musafin kedishi, musafin shem Shabbos aleihim, shem boin chovalav, hatmidim boin ba'af b'chol. So we see that Musaf is specific to Shabbos. So we see that Shabbos elevates the status of the Musaf. Rashi continues, L'tmidim lo ahanoi, or ahani, kevan deha'idna kreven, im kain shem Shabbos aleihim. The fact that it's being done on Shabbos means that it also has the kedusha of Shabbos. The Shabbos Tamid. It's not a weekday Tamid anymore. Yeah. Makes me feel better about not having a Shabbos suit. It's a Shabbos suit. Even on Shabbos, it's elevated.
Yeah, somehow.
Whatever
that means, Shabbos is
yeah.
Everything.
You sound as Hasidish as we're ever going to hear you. That's about as much as we're going to get out of the Litvak in the room. So that is exactly right. That is exactly right. The next case is going to have quite a similar rhetorical response, as you'll soon see. Let's say you have Shabbos, that's Rosh Chodesh. Musvei Shabbos, Kodmin, the Musvei Rosh Chodesh. That's a Shabbos we say, Ata Yotzarta, right? On that Shabbos, it's Musvei, it's plural. We have the Musaf and Shel Shabbos, and we have the Musaf and Shel Rosh Chodesh. And we said the Musaf of Shabbos is before Rosh Chodesh. So what does that show you? It shows you that Shabbos, which is Tadir, goes before Rosh Chodesh, which in this case, the implication is that it's Mekudash. Says the Gemara, Atu Rosh Chodesh l'musafin didei ahani, l'musvei Shabbos lo ahani. You think the status of Rosh Chodesh only elevates the korban for Rosh Chodesh? No, it elevates everything. And now, if you couple the first answer and second answer together, there's double kedushas. You have the Shabbos Rosh Chodesh on the Tamid. You have Shabbos Rosh Chodesh on the Musaf, and on both of the Musafin, on the Shabbos Musaf and on the Rosh Chodesh Musaf, all the korbanos. So that doesn't work either. Next, 5-6 lines down on Sadi Aleph Amanav Tashma. Musvei Rosh Chodesh, Kodmen Musvei Rosh Hashanah. So let's say we're talking about Rosh Hashanah. You have korbanos for Rosh Chodesh. Afal Pi that we don't really call it. We don't really talk about it like that. But no, I'm just saying on Rosh Hashanah we're not even like. What? No, I know. I'm just saying the way, like we don't. For example, we don't like. We don't say halal, but we're not even like benching Shabbos Mevarchim. It's a weird Rosh Chodesh. It's just different. It is functionally a Rosh Chodesh, which is the fact that we still bring a korban. So what about the double korbanos on Rosh Hashanah? Ones that are reflective of the new moon, right? It's a new month, so it's Rosh Chodesh. And at the same time, we have korbanos that are specific to Rosh Hashanah. So there we see Musvei Rosh Chodesh, Kodman the Musvei Rosh Hashanah. On the one hand, Rosh Chodesh is more tadir than Rosh Hashanah, but at the same time, Rosh Hashanah is Yom HaRichta. It's a beautiful Yom Kadosh. And Afal Gad, the Rosh Hashanah Kadsha. So says the Gemara, same exact rhetorical line. Atu Rosh Hashanah lemusafei didei ahani. You think it only helps its own korbanos? Pasha, that's not true. Lemusvei Rosh Chodesh lo ahani. No. Whatever day is going on, whatever day on which there are multiple korbanos, either multiple korbanos musaf, like Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh, whatever the combo deal is, Rosh Chodesh and Shabbos. And forget that, even a Tamid and a musaf, they're all elevated to the same level. There is no Mekudash in those cases. And therefore we fall to our default rule, and it's an unencumbered rule now. Tadir Sheno, Tadir Kodem. There's no competing factor anymore. Answer number 4, 8 lines down. Tashma, davar acher. Bircha, I love when I see these Gemaras that are like from Moad. It says the Gemara, Birchas hayayin tedira, o birchas hayom eno tedira. What about Friday night Kiddush? How do we make Friday night Kiddush? First we say Borei Priya Gofen, and then we go into the Kedushas Hayom. The Tadir v'she'eno Tadir, Tadir Kodem, Afal Gav, the Birchas Hayom Kdesha. Very interesting. The bracha of Borei Priya Gofen is Tadir v'she'eno Tadir, Tadir Kodem. Look at Kiddush on Shabbos day. There is no bracha of Kedusha on Shabbos day. We make Borei Priya Gofen first there. So we're clearly employing Tadir v'she'eno Tadir, Tadir Kodem on Friday nights, because we say Borei Priya Gofen, which is Mishum Tedirus. And the second bracha, which is Mishum Kedushas Hayom, we push to number 2. By the way, this is a debate in the Gemara as to which bracha we do first. Back in Shabbos, brachos. So we're closer to the other brachos than we are to the past brachos. Okay, so that's what the Gemara says is Nacharaya, that we see that Tedirus overrides Kedusha. Again, remember our question, that what do we say? Do we say Tadir u'makudash ezem kodem? So here we see that Tadir wins. Says the Gemara, Atu Shabbos, the Birchas Hayom Hanoi, Birchas Hayayin, Lo Hanoi. What generated the bracha of Kedushas Hayom for Shabbos? Shabbos. And this Borei Priya Gofen, it's a Shabbos Borei Priya Gofen. The way you said it about the Tadir. Perfect. So says the Gemara, we're not dealing with Mekudash and less Mekudash. We're just dealing with Tadir V'Shenu Tadir Tadir Kodem. So therefore we make the bracha Borei Priya Gofen before the bracha Kedushas Hayom. Tashma, a famous halacha, Damar Rabbi Yochanan halacha, Mispalel Adam shel Mincha ve'achar kach shel Musafin. And it says on the side, it adds here, Ve'afal gab the tfilas Musafin k'deisha. Let's say that it's now Zman Mincha. For whatever logistical reason, this has totally happened to me before, or something came up, an emergency, an interruption, and I didn't daven Musaf attached to, let's say, Rosh Chodesh in the morning. And now it's already Zman Mincha. Oh, so what do you do first? Shteit and Shulchan Aruch, based on this Gemara and the one that's quoted in Brachos, you say Mincha before Musaf, out of order. Why? Tadir v'she'enu Tadir Tadir Kodem. And because I have a chiyuv now to say mincha, the tedirus kicks in. But Musaf has more kedusha than mincha. So says the Gemara, guess what it says? The same thing that it's been saying. Atu Shabbos, Tfilas Musafin Ahanoi, Tfilas Mincha Lo Hanoi on Shabbos. You're telling me, no, it's a Shabbos Tika Mincha. It's elevated too, and they have a similar level of kedusha. And therefore, our regular rule of Tadir V'She'enu Tadir Tadir Kodem can be employed without interruption, because that mincha is equal to that musaf. Good. Final answer, and it'll take us a few lines to get to the next question. I spoke earlier about 2 dots. There aren't 2 dots, but there is an iboyalahu close to the halfway mark, so another 5 or 6 lines. Toshma, shlomim shel emesh, chatas ve'asham shel hayom. Let's say that I have a shlomim from yesterday, and I have a chatas or an asham of today. The din is shlomim shel emesh kodmin. Now, what's the implication? Because the implication is what we need here. Ha'idi v'idi diyom. The implication is that had they both been brought the same day, the chatas and the asham on the one side, or a shlamim on the other, then had they been brought the same day, then chatas v'asham kadmei v'afal gav the shlamim tediri. Now, here we have it a little bit different. The shlamim is going to be more tadir in this case. And the chatas ve'asham are not. A chatas and an asham are only brought upon need. A shlamim is regulated. It's brought on specific holidays. It's brought under more scheduled circumstances. So therefore, says the Gemara, we see from over here that the kedusha wins, because really the shlamim did I say something wrong there? Says the Gemara, if we have, what was the diuk? That if they both happen at the same day, chatas v'asham kadmei, right? The chatas v'asham is not tadir. The shlamim is tadir and it's out of order. So says the Gemara, Omar Rava, and here we get a new terminology. Matsui ka'amris. You're talking about matsui. Matsui is the type of thing that comes up, and when it comes up, you're chayiv, but it's not scheduled. Achatas is a great example of that. If I eat treif and I do so b'shogeg, then I'm chayiv achatas. But it's not calendarized. It's not put on the schedule that every morning, like a tamid or whatever, every shlamim, like every holiday. It's not like that. It says the Gemara, matzui ka'amris. Are you asking from a case of chatas and asham, which are matzui? Yes, they're chayiv when they happen, but no, they're not scheduled like something tadir. Tadir kami boilan. Matzui lo kami boilan. I'm not talking about a case of matzui. The question of the Gemara was a case of tadir. So if your case of chatas ve'asham is a case of matzui, where you're only chayiv when it happens, as opposed to something that's scheduled or calendarized, then your case is not my case. It's apples and oranges. You can't even learn from your case. Amar le Rav Huna bar Yehuda le Rava, atu matzui lav tadir. Isn't a case of matzui, isn't it also tadir? Let's listen to this beautiful example of the Gemara Vatanya. Otzias ha-pesach she'eno tadir. We're not going to get into the details of the context of this brisa, but where the korban pesach is not tadir, v'lo otzias ha-mila, but I'm going to still keep bris mila, shehi tadira. Bris mila is matzui. Bris mila is not calendarized. It's not like every Tuesday we have a bris. It's not like, it depends when the kid's born, and it depends if the late is this way, if it's after shki. I just got a phone call earlier. The baby was born Thursday night at 11 o'clock. Okay, now we have a chiyuv for a bris on the following Friday. But that's matzui, that's not tadir. But the way the Gemara refers to bris milah here is as tadir. In fact, it literally calls it tadira. So obviously matzui and tadir are the same, which rejuvenates the question from before. That if chatas ve'asham, which are matzui / tadir, if they are first, and then we see that the shlamim was after, so we bring back our question. Says the Gemara, no. Two different answers. My tadira, what does it mean, tadira, when we talk about bris milah? Tadira b'mitzvos. It just means that milah is done more often than korban pesach, but it's not actually tadir. You can't say that bris milah is tadir. Just like you can't say that a chatas and an asham are tadir. They're triggered by external factors. They're not triggered by a pasuk in Chumash that says every day you have to bring the tamid. They're different in their texture. They're different. We know it, we feel that difference. It's not the same thing. So therefore, in the context of the brayse of Otzias HaPesach she'eno tadir, below Otzias HaMila she'tadira, there we're just highlighting that bris milah is more frequent in its occurrence than the korban pesach. I have more brises this week than we will bring the korban pesach this year. So that's what the Gemara means by tadira. Mila lagabe pesach ki tadir damya. These two answers are quite similar. That mila, in regards to the korban pesach, is considered tadir. We're not going to get into the nafkaminas between these two answers, though they are quite similar. So, if that's true, that mila is, that matzui is considered to be tadir. So if mila is tadir, then we can ask our question. But what we seem to say over here is that it's really not tadir, because we said that no, it's only tadir relative to the bris, relative to korban pesach. So that means that matzui is not the same as tadir. If matzui is not the same as tadir, then you can't ask me from that case of chatas ve'asham, which is matzui, because matzui is not the same as tadir. Great mare makom, but for a different sugya. You asked which one's better, tadir or mekudash. That mare makom is not shaykh to us, because it's not talking about tadir, it's talking about matzui. It's only tadir. It's not. It's only tadir relative to korban pesach. The point of the Gemara was that it happens more frequently.
Doesn't have a child to be mauled every year between the ages of 20 and 60. Or, I mean, you might live longer, but I'm saying.
The Gemara is agreeing with you. The language when it says my tadira, what's happening in the Gemara is why did you use the word tadir by bris milah? The answer is it's tadir b'mitzvos. It happens more often, more frequently, but not that it's actually a din in tadir. You're right.
Doesn't really happen more frequently. I mean,
absolutely, it happens more frequently.
In the big picture, yeah, it can happen pretty much every day of the year. There's a bris,
which is never shaykh by the Korban Pesach.
Not the same.
It's true.
At the big picture,
it's true. I guess there's multiple ways to. I didn't look at it.
Right. You have more bris this week, but you're the exception.
The point is that let me say this in halachic terms. Every day is a day that's eligible for bris milah, but only one day a year, one afternoon a year is. So that's when we use the word tadira by bris milah. That's what it's talking about. Is that the Korban Pesach is so narrow. An afternoon on Yud Dalet, it's so narrow. Bris milah is 354 days a year. That's what the Gemara over here means, that it's being used in that particular way. And let me just see if there's a Rashi that reflects what I just said to let you know that I didn't make it all up. Rashi actually says something a little different here. But Tadira b'mitzvos, Sedura b'mitzvos, Shenichur shalosh esrei brisos b'tzibuyin. Okay, that's
both Korans. That's what I mean. I looked in Rashi first.
Yeah. I actually didn't see that Rashi. I looked at the
why they're mentioned together.
That's for sure, right? They're always grouped. They're the only two assays that have kares. Wow. Okay, let's look at the next question of the Gemara. Iboyalahu. We're about 2/3 of the way down, a little bit more. And the Gemara, 8 lines into the wide lines, the Gemara says, Iboyalahu. We have another question. Tadir v'she'eno tadir. Let's say we have a case where we have one item that is more frequent than the other, but inadvertently, the kadim v'shachat l'she'eno tadir. Okay, I have a korban tamid and I have a korban musaf, and I made a mistake, and I shechted the korban musaf first. What do we do? We're not asking about what's ideal. This is all b'di'eved. What do we do when we mess up? We know what tadir is. The korban tamid should go first. It's every day. Korban musaf is 60 times a year if you include all the yomim tovim. So says the Gemara, mi amrinon kevan deshachte makrivle. That once you shechted that which is eino tadir, let's say the korban musaf in this case, once you shecht it, see it through. Go finish the whole korban. Shchita kabbalah halacha zrika. Go do the zrika. Odilma yohiv le'acher dimemares bedamo. Give the blood from the korban musaf, the eino tadir. Have someone be memares. Stir the blood so it doesn't congeal. Ademakriv le'letadir. Then go back and shecht the tamid, which is your korban that intaka is a tadir, and then finish that v'hadar makriv l'she'eino tadir. You messed up. You brought the korban musaf before you brought the korban tamid shel ben arba'im. The korban tamid shel shachar. So do we stir the musaf blood and do we bring? That's actually the second option. Do we just finish the musaf, or do we stir the musaf blood and then bring the chatas, finish that, bring the tamid and finish that all? So which one is it? We're going to have 4 answers, which will bring us to the next Mishnah. Amar Reb Huna Misura Toshma. We're going to see answers. All the Mari Mekomos we're about to see, we saw already, and we're going to apply them to this question. But it's different than the question we were asking earlier, and let's call it out. The previous question is, what takes preference, Tadir or Mekudash? Here we're not asking that question. Here we're saying you messed up. You took the Eino Tadir and did it before the Tadir. So let's see how the Gemara says we should respond. Halfway down. Shlamim shel emesh chatas v'asham shel yom. Shel emesh kodem l'shel yom. If you have a shlamim from yesterday and a chatas from today, the halacha is shel emesh kodem l'shel yom. We prefer to do the one from last night. What's the diuk from here? Ha diyom dumya de emesh. But if you had one that was of today, similar to yesterday, we have no idea what those words mean. That's why the Gemara says v'hechidami. Literally, what are you talking about? How could last night be today? The kadim shachte l'shlamim. You shechted the shlamim before you shechted the chatas. So what's the halacha? Chatas ve'asham kadme. So we see over here that you have to go back and do the first one first, the tadir one first. So according to this first Mari Makom, The Gemara seems to imply that when you ask the question of if I have a tadir and an eno tadir, let's say a tamid and a musaf, and I mess up and I do the musaf first, so then after you do Kabbalah Sadam, you have someone sit there and stir to make sure that the dam is not going to congeal. They're mamares, they stir it. Then we go back, and so what we see from over here is that that's what we should do. We should go back and make sure that the tadir is taken care of before completing the eno tadir. So that's our first answer. The Gemara says, well, wait 1 second. Dilma shlamim de'emesh v'chatas v'asham deyom hechi mishkachas la. Maybe the case was actually different. This makes a new kimta. Deshachtinu letarvaihu. Maybe in that case, the only reason why we had preferential treatment for the chatas wasn't because in general we have to go back to the tadir korban, but in that case you shechted both. You just happened to shecht the other one first. We're not saying you shechted the first one. You're standing there with your blood. I'm sorry. We're not saying you shechted the eno tadir, and then you have the blood and you push it for. No, you shechted both of them at the same time. In that case, we say you do the tadir one first. But maybe aval lo shachtinu l'tarvayu tibaylach. Maybe that question still remains. We don't know about. There's no way to know what the brisa that you quoted was handling in. Was the brisa handling in our question, which is we only shechted the shlamim, we didn't shech the chatas. What do we do? No, perhaps the brisa was talking about a totally different shaila, which is where you shechted both. But our question perhaps has no answer, and that rejects answer number 1. Tashma 2/3 of the way down. Davar acher, birchas hayayin tadira, ubirchas hayom eno tadira. We know that the birchas hayayin of borei pri hagafen is tadir because Shabbos Kiddush is only borei pri hagafen. Every day of the week, every Shabbos day, every Yom Tov day is a borei pri hagafen. Every night has multiple brachos. The tadir v'she'eno tadir kodem. What do we see over there? We see that the bracha of yayin always goes first, because tadir v'she'eno tadir kodem. So maybe we can learn from there that because we chose that the bracha of yayin goes first, so therefore we should always go back to the beginning. So if, to go back to our question, we did the eno tadir first, too bad. Be memares, stir, go get the tamid shel shachar that you messed up on, and go bring that korban and finish it, and then go back to the blood from the second. So it's a strange mari makom to learn from, because this mari makom is not about b'diavad and the chatchila like the previous one. This is just basic tadir rules. I don't know. It strikes me as a weird source. It feels like it's not really relatable enough to me, but nevertheless, the Gemara posits it.
Opposite. Well, see, like Yayin and Kiddush, something that we know something about, and it throws me off.
What does that mean?
You mean to say you're going to learn from a b'diavad case that I barely understand in Kunshin?
Yeah.
From good old Shabbos Kiddush? I
Oh.
know a thing or two about Shabbos Kiddush.
Are you saying they're so far apart? How could you learn one from the other?
No.
The tochen. You're just saying the sugya. Oh, okay.
Too about Shabbos Kiddush.
That's true.
How could I possibly know anything about?
Correct. That bothered me less, but I hear you. I don't think it's comparable because it's not b'diavad. This is the chatchila. Our case is b'diavad. You did the eno tadir first. It was an accident.
Case would be, what if you did Kiddush wrong?
That should have been. That's not what. Yes, that would have been comparable, but it's not here. So says the Gemara, Hachanami, here too by Shabbos Kiddush with the 2 brachos of Borei Pri Hagafen and the Sher Kiddushanu b'mitzvosav, the mitzvah that we sang, the Kedushas Hayom, the Asyan, the Kevan, the Asyan, since they both came about because of Shabbos and they both became Kaddish because of Shabbos, Kiman Deshchite Tarvai Hudami. It's Keilu, it's like, it's the same Mukimta we gave earlier. It's like you shechted both the shlomim and the chatas, and then asked your shaila. This is a hard comparison. The Gemara wants to say that the mari makom of borei pri hagafen and asher kiddushan, the mitzvah that we have kedushas hayom, those 2 brachos have a level of sanctity that once Shabbos kicks in at Shkia, at Seis, whatever time we call Shabbos, that they're the same now. It's equivalent to shechting the tadir and the eno tadir at the same time, and therefore you can't bring a raya from here to our case, which was where you only shechted the eno tadir. This requires Rishonim, because it's not, the whole thing doesn't feel comparable. How are you comparing two brachos to shchita? So, okay, it's definitely what the Gemara is saying. Definitely. I'm certain I'm missing something. So that's what the Gemara says. Okay, next answer. Answer number 3. Tashma. We learned earlier as well. In this context as well, we're going to ask the same question. Damar Rabbi Yochanan halacha. Mispalel adam shel mincha v'achar kach shel musafin. See, this is more relatable. You messed up. Now we have a din b'diavad. You hit chatzos hayom plus 30 minutes. It's time to daven mincha. Okay, now we have apples to apples. Because when it comes to the mincha, you should have davened musaf already. Oh, so now what do? You do the eno, you do the tadir first and leave the eno tadir alone. So Tushtel, if you bring it back to our Gemara, what would you say? You would say that if you shechted the eno tadir, but then tadir kicks in by mincha. Oh, see, now you have to be mamares, stir the blood, go take care of the tamid shel shachar, and then when you're done with that, go back to the blood from the afternoon, from the musaf. Shalom al Yisrael. Says the Gemara, Hachanami, Kevan demates man tfilas mincha, kema deschite tarvayhu dami. It's all 3 cases so far. Same exit card, same get out of jail free card, which is no. Once you hit the zman of mincha, you have a double chiyuv. It's not about tediris anymore. You have a double chiyuv that it's keilu you did a double shchita. It's comparable to shechting the shlamim out of order. You did the eno tadir, let's say the musaf. You shechted a musaf before the tamid shel shachar. And then which one do you do? Oh, so then this case is not our case. Our case wants to know if you only did one. The case of mincha and musaf is not comparable because it's similar to the case of a double shchita of the eno tadir followed by the tadir. Therefore, we cannot learn from here. Omar le Rav Acha Bareda Rav Ashi Ravina. He says like this. Shachto kodem chatzos. In regards to the korban pesach, some say this is a brisa. If you look on the side here, it says yesh lahosif tashma. So maybe perhaps this is a brisa. So shachto kodem chatzos. If you did shchita on the korban pesach before chatzos hayom pasol, mipnei shenemar bo ben ha'arbaim. What if, however, you did the korban pesach after chatzos, but it was kodem l'tamid, which is talking about the tamid shel ben ha'arbaim, which is not the way it's supposed to work, but you were out of order. So it says the Gemara, if you did it kodem l'tamid shel ben ha'arbaim, you did the korban pesach early kosher, and look at this black on white. V'hei memares b'damo ad she'yizrak hadam. Now we have a gorgeous proof. Perfect, the b'diavad scenario. It's after chatzos hayom on erev Pesach, and you mess up. You bring the korban Pesach before you bring the tamid shel ben ha'arbaim. Black on white, what does the brisa tell you? You made a mistake. Stir the blood of the korban Pesach. Go back and do the tamid shel ben ha'arbaim, and then go back and finish the Pesach. Very, very clear case. Oh, it's b'diavad. It's not like the case of the brachos. It's clear what happened. It's talking about korbanos. It's not esoteric in its comparisons. Nevertheless, the Gemara says over here, I shouldn't say nevertheless, it's very clear in this case what happens. You go back and you go take care of the tadir. Says the Gemara, no. Perhaps when you went to the Rav to ask a shaila, in that case, in that brisa, from a person who did the tamid, who did the korban pesach after chatzos, but before the tamid shel ben ha'arbaim, when did you ask your shaila? Before you went to ask a shaila, you did the korban pesach, you collected the blood, then you shechted the korban tamid shel ben ha'arbaim and collected the blood, and then you said, Rebbe, which one should I do first? Pashut, he said to do the tamid first. Obviously, you already shechted it, not our shaila, and therefore not a good marmakom. And Amar le Rav Acha Saba le Rav Ashi Masnisan Namideka. This actually aligns with our Mishnah. Diktani ad sheyizrak hadam. This actually aligns with our Mishnah that it's up until the time that you are zorek the dam. V'loktani ad sheyishchot v'yizrak dam shma mina, like we are saying that it has to be the case that if we are going to get a mari makom, we don't have one, but if we were to have a mari makom, it would only be where only the shchita of the Eino Tadir was done, but all of these Mari Makomos are not that way, and therefore we do not have clarity on our question. That brings us to the 2 dots, I believe, but I lost my spot. Thank you very much. The last 2 dots before the Mishnah. Uvechulan Kohanim Rishoim. This goes back to the Mishnah that you learned on Shabbos. It says over there that the Kohanim are allowed to take this food and do with it as they see fit in regards to cooking it. So it says the Gemara, my time, because Amar Kra L'Moshcha L'Gdula. The word L'Moshcha is a reference to Gdula. Kederach Sham Lachem Ochlin. So you're allowed to cook it however you want. You could boil it, you could fry it, you can cook it, whatever you prefer. Good, Baruch Hashem. That brings us to the next Mishnah. This obviously is a very thick block with a lot of nuance. We're going to learn about halfway down on Tzadi Aleph Amid Beis, and then we'll stop. Says the new Mishnah. Amar Reb Shimon. If you see in the Beis HaMikdash that someone is handing out oil in the Azara, ein tzarich lishol mahu. You don't have to worry about seeing blood, seeing shemen, seeing oil. Ella. Mosa Rekike Menachos Yisrael. Maybe it's just extra oil from the Korbanos Mincha that were saturated with oil of a Yisrael, or Velog Shemen Shel Mitzora, or it was extra balance from the Korban Mincha of a Mitzora. And says the Gemara, Imroi Shemen Shunitan Al Gabe Ha'ishim. If you see extra oil that's being used for fire, so says the Gemara, Ein sarach lishal mahu. Don't let that bother you. Ela mosa rekike minchas kohanim uminchas kohen Mashiach. This must be extra oil from these 2 types of korbanos mincha, the minchas kohen and the minchas kohen Mashiach. What's he getting after? Why is it that Reb Shimon is saying don't worry about the extra oil? Because he holds next 3 words she'ein misnadvin shemen. Rashi says she'ein misnadvin shemen lefichach lo yalel datcha sheyesh shemen hamischalek min haniktar nedava. This is not a donation. If you see that there's oil, it's coming from the extras of korbanos mincha. If you see that there's extra oil being put on the fire, it's coming from the korbanos mincha b'kohen. But certainly it was not donated. Says Reb Tarfon Omer, I totally disagree with you. Misnad bin shemen. And therefore, if I see extra shemen in the Makom HaMikdash, no problem. You can donate that. No problem at all. That brings us to the top of Tzadi Aleph Amid Beis. Let us jump in. Omar Shmuel. Ledivrei Reb Tarfon, who holds that you're allowed to donate oil. Ledivrei Reb Tarfon hamisnadev shemen. When you do give oil, how does it work? So the kohen is komtzo. He does kmitza with some of the oil that you've donated. V'shiryo ne'echalan, and the rest of it v'shirayo ne'echalan. The extras gets eaten. It gets consumed. My taima. Why is this the case? Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, and there's actually a girsa change here as well. Ditanya v'nefesh ki sakriv korban mincha, and the drasha is malame shemisnad ben shemen. The Mefarshim here point out, as Rashi points out on the second line, that the word korban is extra. Dibur hamaschil korban mincha demati lemechtav ki sakriv. Again, girsa change. If you look down at the bottom, ki sakriv mincha. But there is an extra word of korban mincha, so therefore, because of korban yisera l'drasha. So according to Reb Tarfon, again, it sounds like a non sequitur when you separate it. The extra word of korban teaches me that I can donate oil, and that the word is not an oil-based word. It doesn't say shemen, mishcha. None of the words we would have thought that connect. Doesn't matter. The word is extra, and the drasha can be learned from the word korban. And when we donate oil, it is, as the Gemara says on the 4th line, v'chi mincha. It's similar to a korban mincha. Ma mincha, just like a korban mincha, komtza v'shireha ne'echalin, that the kmitza and the shirayim, you do kmitza, and the extras are eaten. Af shemen, komtzo, the kohen will do kmitza by the shemen, v'shirayo ne'echalin. Very, very good. That's a clear shita of the why behind Reb Tarfon. He holds that the reason why we are allowed to donate shemen to the Beis HaMikdash, the reason why is because of the extra word korban. How do we do it? Just like the mincha. We make sure that the kohen does a kmitza and all the extras go to those who are allowed to eat it. Amar Reb Zera, afonan nami tanina. Yeah, this is not new, but it's not explicit. Amar Reb Shimon, this is a quote from our Mishnah that we just learned at the bottom of Tzadi Aleph Amar Aleph. Amar Reb Shimon, im rois shemen shemischalek ba'azara. What did we say in our Mishnah? That according to Reb Shimon, if you see oil that's being given out throughout the azara, the halacha is iata tzarich lishol mahu. You don't have to worry about. Remember, Reb Shimon says you're not allowed to be misnadev shemen. So he says, if you see someone giving out shemen, don't worry. Because he held that it's also to be misnadev. You see oil, I promise you, it's not. He says it's not. It's not what you think it is. You're not allowed to donate oil, says Reb Shimon. What's the diuk? Michlal demand amar misnadben mischalek. That according to somebody, he's obviously the way he wrote it, the syntax was clear that there was another shita there. So therefore, I already knew that. I knew that from the Resha, that there was someone who gave out, who held that you could do that. Amar le Abaye, okay, but then why were there two cases? Amar le Abaye, ema seifo. Imrois shemen shenitan al gabe ishim yat tzarich lishal mau. Ela mosar kikem menachos kohanim u'minchas kohen mashiach shem misnad ben shemen. Michlal del mandar misnad ben kulam leishim. In both of those cases, in the Resha, we have the diuk that you're allowed to be misnadev shemen. Reb Shimon says no. The diuk is that yes, you are allowed to. And the Seifa does the same thing on the ishim, on the fires that you're allowed to. So says the Gemara, well, wait 1 second. Le Abaye, according to Abaye, Kasha Resha, and Le Reb Zera, Kasha Seifa, they both have a problem. And the Gemara responds like this. Bishlama le Reb Zera, when it comes to the sheet of Reb Zera that we seem to have an extraneous case, remember he said Afan Anami Tanina, we have our Mishnah, and then we have the Brisa on line 3 that Melamed Shemis Nadvin Shemen. So we have two of the same exact Mara Makomos. So by him he says Reisha b'shirayim seifa b'kometz. That's no big deal. I can come up with enough halacha to verify and validate each source. Ela Abaye kasha, but according to Abaye, what would he do with all of these sources? Says the Gemara, and this is not a normal comment, and we're going to analyze it. Tana Reisha atu seifa. The Reisha of the Mishnah was written because of the seifa. It was backwards. Normally we say the Seifa was written because Nebuch, what can I do? The Reisha said something, you forced my hand, you painted me into a corner. Fine. This is the other way. That the reason the Reisha was written the way it was written was because of the Seifa. Asks the Gemara, Bishlama Seifa Tani Mishum Reisha. Oh, hold on. I could understand if you want to tell me that the end of a Brisa or a Mishnah was written a certain way because of the Reisha. That I totally get. But El Reisha Mishum Seifa Mitani? Totally backwards. Says the Gemara, and with this we're going to conclude absolutely. Amrei b'ma'arava Tana Reisha Mishum Seifa. It's very odd, but it is in fact true. That also shows you that the Reisha and Seifa, this is the deeper svara. If you say that the Reisha could have been written with a quirk because of the Seifa, that means that when the Reisha was written, the Seifa was already knowable. Right? The author did it on purpose. Had to be. So when Rabbi Yehuda Nasi for the Mishnayos and Levi Bar Kapar for Tosefta and all the other brises who were written by whoever they were written by, if we're saying that you can have a Reisha that's influenced by the Seifa, it just means that they knew exactly what the Seifa was going to say, and they did whatever rejigging in the Reisha had to be. Gewaltig. All right, we'll stop right here at the words Tashma, 3 lines before the wide lines. Wishing you all a beautiful night.